Everyone, and welcome to today's event, our panel discussion, Fostering an Entrepreneurial Ecosystem. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Paul Cotter, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Stukent, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today. As we begin, I want to encourage you to use the chat feature. Go ahead and start by sharing where you're from. Maybe today even share a new song that you're looking forward to. Our panel host, our moderator, Jen Riley, she is looking forward to Beyonce's new album today. So, this is a good day for Beyonce. Maybe put a crown in the chat for the Queen. So just let us know what you're interested in and where you're from. We really want to hear that. Also, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type them in the chat. Our team is standing by to answer your questions in real time throughout today's event. So just real quick, we want to welcome LaKetra from Texas. Welcome. Sarah from Nashville. Leah from Texas also. We got lots of Texas here. Dennis, welcome. Priyanka, welcome from New York. So thanks everyone for joining us today. We're excited that you're with us. So besides today's event, we have many more that are up and coming, including 2024 AI in Education Trends, how AI has impacted my educator role. This is next Friday. And after that, we have how to use a simulation in your course on April 19th. So be sure to follow the link in the bottom left section of your screen to learn more about both of these events and any other event that we have here at Stukent. Also, if you can't stick around for all of today's session, don't worry. We plan to share the recording with all the attendees, along with any links to any resources that are shared throughout today's event. And this goes without saying, but please be respectful and polite when commenting today. So we will be sharing a complete entrepreneurship's startup checklist in today's event. Also, stay tuned for our giveaways. We will randomly select one live attendee to win an Amazon or Starbucks gift card. Also, as a special gift to those attending today, anyone who requests access during today's webinar and attends a walkthrough with one of our course consultants during the month of April will be eligible to win one of 4 additional gift cards. Did you know that Stukent has a brand new addition to our entrepreneurship suite? It's called New Venture Creation, and it's a new courseware by Brad George from Babson College, and it's now available for your review. We'll post a link right now in the chat for you to check out this courseware later. Okay, so while you're taking a second to request access, let me introduce and welcome each of our panelists to the stage. First of all, I want to introduce Dr. Jen Riley. She's our moderator today. She's a marketing professor at Vanderbilt University. She's an award-winning entrepreneur and consultant, and she's the author of Stukent's Entrepreneurship Courseware. Hi, Jen.
Hey, everyone. So happy to be here. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for joining us. I also want to introduce Isaac Adi. He's an accomplished and award-winning educator, author, and speaker and strategist. We have Dylan Harper, the owner of Forge Marketing Group. Jewel Thompson, she's an entrepreneurship lecturer at Ashesi University. She's the co-developer of the Ashesi Venture Incubator and the head of the African Women Amplified Group and owner of EcoLaunch. And we have Dan Drogosh. He is social program coordinator at the Wondry Vanderbilt University's Innovation Center. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for participating in our panel today. Right now, I'm going to turn the time over to Jen and let you run the panel.
Awesome. So excited to get into it. I think it goes without saying, as the entrepreneurship author for Stukent, that I am really passionate about entrepreneurship and I love it. So that's what I like to get us started with today. What I like about entrepreneurship is that you can really take nothing and make something. You can create jobs, you can share your passion with the world, and that's what I love about entrepreneurship. Let's go to each of our panelists and see what they love about entrepreneurship. Isaac, you want to get us started?
Yeah, sure. I love the fact that entrepreneurship is one of the most powerful forces for change in communities and in society today. So many young people are really thinking about, how do I become an entrepreneur? How do I start a business, create value for customers? One, because they know that they can generate wealth, but two, it's a pathway to make significant impact in their local community.
I love that. I love that. For the attendees, go ahead and sound off in the comments. I want to know what you love about entrepreneurship as well. Let's go to Dylan next.
Yeah, as an entrepreneur myself, I do have an affinity for it. My favorite thing about it is just the amount of change that's involved. It's never the same thing day by day. And to really do entrepreneurship right and really build a business yourself as an entrepreneur has to change too. So it's always a constant battle of learning something new or trying a new approach. So as your business grows, you also grow with it. So that's my favorite thing about entrepreneurship.
I love that. I love that. Let's go over to Jewel next.
Great. Hi, everyone. So I agree with Isaac and Dylan, and of course you, Jen. You've said it all, but ultimately, I feel like entrepreneurship is a force for catalytic change. And much like Dylan was saying, it forces you to change. So you're never the same once you start your first business. You learn from that and you go to the next one if you're able to get to the next level, if you go over the hill. And it requires a certain level of gusto. And so inside of you, whether you're one that's more introverted or you feel as though you don't have the best ideas, when you see that nexus between the individual and the opportunity that they're pursuing, oftentimes that's when we get a lot of genius. So that's what I love about entrepreneurship.
Nice. And last but certainly not least, Dan.
Yeah, so the majority of my experience in the e-ship world has been community-based, and particularly rural communities. So when we think about entrepreneurship, when I think about it, I think that I like the ripple effect that it takes for one entrepreneur to get their vision completed, right? He or she's gonna have to lean on those resources that are right around them. And that kind of elevates everyone, right? We talk about change. And so it's not just the entrepreneur that's causing this positive change. It's everyone who's had to help them get to where they want to be. Lean on those local marketers, lean on the Chamber of Commerce and their communities to really help them get what they want accomplished. So that's what I like seeing, is the ripple effect of having to include everyone in the community.
Awesome. I love that. Let's dive into the questions because I know that's what our audience wants to hear. And chiming off on what's in the chat, community, taking care of community, the lifeblood of creating something, nourishing it, watching it grow and seeing its successes, opportunity to follow passions. I love all of that. So first question I have for everybody on the panel, I want to know, what skills or qualities do you encourage faculty to foster within students to help them grow their interest in entrepreneurship or their skill set in entrepreneurship? Let's go back to Dan.
All right. So really quick background. So I'm working currently at the Wondery, which is Vanderbilt's Innovation Center on campus. And so we this particular place is a place where we want to see students, faculty, staff, everyone involved in our national community, in our collegiate community involved. And so, back to the question, what skills or qualities would you encourage in faculty? I think as faculty, you are to the students this subject matter expert, but also you have leverage that you can lean on if a particular student makes an ask, like, hey, we want to see this happen on campus. And it might show up in the idea of this entrepreneurship idea. Maybe use some of your position to kind of introduce them to folks, point them to resource centers like the Wondery that probably exist on all campuses that our audience members are a part of, and really encourage the students to go. Don't just stay in their bedrooms. Don't just stay in a library. Physically go visit these places and make those new connections. Because I get students all the time stepping in my office, like, they're coming from across campus, and I'm like, hey, you just did the first step, which is great, which is come here, right? Visit the resource for yourself, and I think that's a great first step.
Awesome. So getting outside of their dorm room, talking to people about their ideas, and actually taking part in the resources on campus. Great job. I love that. Jewel, what skills or qualities you think faculty should kind of encourage for students to foster entrepreneurship?
Sure. I believe that it's really important for faculty to actually help students understand how to engage with their market and particularly leading from a perspective of empathy, right? So oftentimes with our particular course, we introduce design thinking as a framework for them to utilize so that they can step into the shoes of their user and have them at the center of their problem exploration to the point where they get to the solution. So it's all about what is your market saying and what's the unique insight that you're gathering from this market. And that's like the core piece that's going to drive their innovation. So it's less about what's all in your head, but have you gone to the market, had a conversation with them, gotten their feedback, and then found a way to say that, you know, this is the way that I can improve my initial thought, or I'm actually building something they really want. So for me, that's like critical right there. It's like, can you talk to the people that you're building this for or who are suffering from this problem first? And can you forge a good relationship, ask really great questions, and get a unique insight?
I love that. The design thinking is a pillar that I use in my new product development class, trying to get everybody to think empathetically, like what struggles do you have and how are we solving problems? Not just trying to create businesses to just make money, but how are you solving problems? Love that. Let's go to Isaac, and then we'll end with Dylan as our resident entrepreneur.
Sure. You know, my colleagues here have made some really good responses. We all understand that entrepreneurship is about an opportunity and recognizing that opportunity and then capitalizing on that opportunity to address a problem for a particular customer group. So I help students become really clear on what is the actual opportunity, what are you building, and who are you building it for? Is this a solution to a problem that resonates with a large group of customers in a way where you can scale? That's really something critical to understand. Also, because the market is so different now in terms of just resources and capital and things, I encourage students to really embrace a mindset of networking and connectivity, because it takes a very resourceful person to be able to build and scale a venture in this market where it's challenging to get resources like capital. And to do that, I encourage students to get involved in the community. Here in Nashville, we've got a lot of great organizations that support the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And oftentimes, because students are on campuses, they don't know about these organizations. And so I bring those folks into my classroom, or I take the students to the organizations and help them understand that there are resources in the community. And it's about getting out in the community, engaging, connecting, and planting seeds every day that will sprout fruit for your business in the future.
I love that. So really low hanging fruit for any faculty member could be putting together a list of some of those resources in their individual cities to supply to students, whether it's an entrepreneurship class or a marketing class or introduction to finance class. I love that. I love that idea. Dylan, our resident entrepreneur, what do you think as a student? What could your faculty members have encouraged you to do from a skill set perspective and a quality perspective to help you once you started your own business?
Yeah, two things: sales talent and skill is super important. Next is critical thinking, and Jewel, you touched on that with being empathetic, but sales is number one. As an entrepreneur, regardless of the stage that you're in, regardless of the size of your business, you're always selling to somebody. You're selling to your potential customers, your existing customers. You're selling an idea to a stakeholder. You're selling a vision to your team. And early on in the entrepreneurship process, in most cases, you're selling and it sounds weird, but you're selling yourself. You're selling how people look at you. Do they trust you? Are you a resident expert? So you're selling who you are so that you can start to sell your business and sell a product or sell a service. So, and even when your business is large and it's depending on what type of venture you're going into, what you're selling, the value of it increases. So you might just be selling products or selling services to your customers, but as you rise in the ranks in your own business and in leadership, you might be selling partnerships or strategic partnerships, or you might be selling to certain vendors. So you're always selling. And that was something that I didn't really know jumping into entrepreneurship right when I graduated. I hadn't taken any sales classes, so I learned the hard way during a pandemic. So I was selling through cold calling and really trying to figure out what the customers wanted, what solutions they needed. And so that's where it ties in with critical thinking, is you have to really figure out what pain point you're solving for each stakeholder. So and then meeting that with a solution. So that's sales and critical thinking are super important.
I love that. As a sales researcher and After teaching sales for 3 years, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. I think everybody needs to learn sales, and Stukin has some great sales courseware as well. Okay, so second question. It seems like there's a growing emphasis on social entrepreneurship within the world. What do you attribute to this shift, and how can faculty help students assess their ideas or integrate a social venture mission into their original idea? Let's start with Isaac for this one.
Yeah, great question. My dissertation research was on social entrepreneurship. This is something I'm really passionate about. My family's from Ghana, West Africa, so I think most people in developing market contexts understand impact-driven entrepreneurship. We live in a world today where digital technology is helping us see more of what's happening around us and globally. We're aware of more stories, but we're also more aware of systemic failure. And if you talk to most of the Gen Z population, they care about impact. They care about giving back. They care about their community. So it's not surprising to me that this social entrepreneurship wave is taking place and that a lot of the younger generation is thinking about impact driven entrepreneurship and ventures. From a faculty support perspective, in every entrepreneurship class that I teach, we do have lectures on social impact and social entrepreneurship, just to help students understand that there are hybrid business models, or how nonprofit business models may allow for opportunities to do this work, or how a for-profit business model with a secondary focus on impact can still thrive and scale. And I bring social entrepreneurs into the classroom and give students exposure to these individuals to help them see how they built their businesses around social impact. So just exposure and helping students understand that nonprofits aren't the only way to make a difference. You can have a for-profit driven venture that has a social mission and scale, still generate profit, and still make a difference in your community.
I love that. Jewel, let's go to you. I know you have some experience with this.
Absolutely. Again, in full agreement with the panel here. I don't think anyone's gonna say anything that I don't agree with. But particularly what we're seeing working and living in Ghana, and also being Ghanaian, we see a number of opportunities here for students to actually think beyond just the bottom line of, let me make particular profit, let me generate this particular revenue for boards or whoever, right? The executive component. It's more so about the introduction of the triple bottom line, right? And seeing how are we making impact beyond just money for ourselves or profitability for the company? Are we thinking about even the way in which we design our businesses? Have we created instruments that ensure that people are being treated well? Have we created instruments that ensure that where we source from is also something that doesn't cause harm? Have we taken into consideration the outputs of our products and where they're going and how they're impacting the environment? So I think that with all of these shifts, we have this huge experience of business being built off of this concept of consumption and consumerism, that everyone is going to buy in this market, where there's a huge opportunity to ensure that when you're in a developing economy, you go beyond just forcing people to buy, and transitioning it to saying, how can I ensure that I'm building a business that is also doing some good? And I think that's where that shift is coming, is to saying that we want to push back against particularly people who might not even be able to afford what we have in the market, but creating something that can actually transform them into, Dylan's point, being able to also scale that.
Nice. I love it. Dan, with the Wondery, I know you guys do a lot of this.
Yeah. So just to kind of tee up, Isaac, I completely agree with what you said about where this digital economy is giving us exposure to these societal complex issues more than ever before. And that's great, right? Now our generations are more aware of them and they want to help. And like a lot of great solutions, it's kind of like you're just helping your neighbor out with a problem that they have. And what's neat about the time that we're in right now is we have access to some of the most amazing kind of MVP prototyping tools like 3D printers, laser cutters. These machines are getting even easier to use, and the barriers of entry are even lower. And so I think it's empowering a lot of people to kind of take these ideas and really run with it and get it past the idea phase into a working prototype. And I think that helps build that momentum of social change that they want to see. And when they can hand it to their neighbor who's experiencing this issue, they get that feedback. And I think that's that's what's contributing to a lot of shift in these social ideas, is that they can get past the I have a dream kind of phase of like, I want this to be better. It's like, no, actually, I made a working version of this. Like, what do you think? And so I think that excitement that gets built around being able to show this off really helps these young entrepreneurs continue on this really stressful, challenging journey. And to the fact that, like, in students, I'm back to the question here, can faculty help students assess ideas? Yeah, right. We know we have a larger network, and so to utilize that and to point people, it's like, great, this prototype needs to be in front of this group of people. And I think a lot of students, maybe like we mentioned, kind of stay on campus a little too much, and really need to take these ideas and prototypes and put them in the hands of people that potentially could use them.
Awesome, thank you, Dylan. I know you're not a faculty member, but as an entrepreneur, how would you advise faculty to help students kind of assess their ideas and see if they had potentially a social venture as part of it, or just their ideas in general?
Yep. So Professor Adai touched on it a bit. The numbers of it. It's got to work financially, and so helping students not bring their heart to the table all the time, but come with an analytical mind and say, one, how's it going to build the bottom line? Two, how do you measure success? How do you measure impact? And so I think answering those two questions will help students kind of parse through the good ideas from the bad, and really build something that's sustainable. Because I worked at in school or in college, did internship at a nonprofit consulting firm. So they help nonprofits raise capital dollars to do capital projects. And so one thing that we saw a lot of when nonprofits were looking for donors from major institutions was the institutions wanted to see their metrics, how they were currently impacting their stakeholders, and what having that capital investment would help them accomplish, and help them build up their impact. And so some nonprofits and social ventures struggle with just measuring those different metrics. And it can be something small. It could be, how many mouths are we feeding? How many bundles of supplies are we getting to people? But being able to tally those up and plan out ahead of how we're going to measure impact is going to be super important.
I really like that, because I think sometimes from a student perspective, I've worked with a lot of students that are like, okay, I'm going to do this nonprofit, or students that are like, okay, I'm going to do this for profit, but really helping them by saying like, okay, well, what does the bottom line look like from a financial perspective? Should this be a nonprofit, or should this be a for-profit? Should this be a for-profit with a social venture spin to it, or as a secondary? Like, helping them walk through that and say, let's look at the two metrics that will really support that. How are we going to actually measure our impact? I had a guest speaker in class yesterday, and we were talking like, sometimes it's not really about the bottom line, but it's about that impact. And how are we actually measuring that impact, regardless of how much it raises or how much money we make? I think knowing that metric of how we're actually looking to measure impact is really important. Thank you so much for those answers.
Dr. Elliott, if I can add another thing too,
sure.
With that, again, looking at impact, but also just knowing how to monetize. So I think moving forward, we're looking for, you can get donors, but also how can you make money off of what you're doing to help people out? And so there's an organization I was talking with yesterday, OWL. They help folks get kind of second chance opportunities, but they fund a lot of that mission by having a manufacturing component. So they are generating revenue for that nonprofit. So they're not just relying on donors. So again, it's knowing impact, but also knowing how to contribute to that bottom line.
I love that. Thank you so much for adding that. We had some questions submitted as part of the registration, and that overlaps with one of the questions that I had. So integrating students into the community, Isaac has talked about that. Jewel has talked about that. Dan has talked about, like, we've all talked about integration into the larger community where these schools are. And that provides additional opportunities like consumer research. Does the market actually want this? Would the market pay for this? Connecting students with mentors, helping them flesh out ideas. what activities would you recommend to help students get involved in their local communities? And what advice do you have for helping faculty forge some of those community partnerships? Let's go to Jewel first.
Thanks. So I was trying to unmute. So particularly like at our university, I teach a class called Foundations of Design and Entrepreneurship. So that first semester requires students to utilize design thinking as a way to explore problem areas. And with that, when we get to this component of ethnographic research, they take that and go into the community and essentially identify key stakeholders that they want to talk to, be it the ones who are contributing to the challenge or people who particularly are the ones impacted by the challenge. And by identifying this, they go and either immerse themselves into the lifestyles, the work of the people, again, on either side of the coin when it comes to these stakeholders, or of course, they engage in in-depth interviews with these individuals, or it might be something where it's just simply from an observation. They're observing the experiences that these individuals are having, right? And so these are ways in which we get the students involved by saying, you know, beyond just looking at a form of secondary research, we can all go online and see what these problems are, see what these challenges are, actually get into the community. And again, as I mentioned earlier, begin to talk to individuals. And so it's a really important aspect of, you know, our work when we start off with the program. And then there's another project that I lead on campus called Community Entrepreneurship. And this is where we take at least an entire semester of students who are curious about starting social impact type businesses. And we spend 2 weeks in a local community that's almost like a proxy to some of the communities that they're interested in working with. And we go to the community members, talk to them, engage, have experiences with them, work with them in their day-to-day. And it's a really eye-opening perspective because, again, students come to their entrepreneurial pursuits with a lot of assumptions, right? And so we're hoping to like demystify some of these assumptions and actually back them by the facts of what the people have said and what they've seen and experienced so that that can influence design or the direction of their potential solutions. So that's what I would suggest is a lot of that level of immersion and then allowing students to explore and gain these insights.
You're muted, Jen.
Well, that's embarrassing. All right, let's go over to Dan.
So I think what everyone's going to say is going to be great, but I've got a piece of advice that's sitting in my head right now. In our social innovation programs, we really try and stress to the students to make sure that they are aware of how they are showing up in community. And so what comes to mind is it's really easy as faculty members and as students to want to go get closer to these nonprofit owners and these small businesses in these communities and ask for their time, right? The thing is and it's all from a desire of wanting to help them. But that ask, that time commitment that you're asking of these small business owners, that's costing them, right? They're busy people. I mean, and they're not getting paid to spend this time to give you that information that might help you. And so it's just, we really stress like, hey, you know, maybe there's a way to compensate them for their time. In some of our programs at Vanderbilt, we actually find a way to pay these nonprofit owners and workers for their time and commitment to giving access to our students for them to help them, right? It's like making this an equitable relationship on both ends is really what we stress to our students is be aware of how you show up and what you're exactly asking of these people that you want to help, and just know that.
Awesome. Thank you. Isaac, anything to add? Activities
What I
that
would
you
say,
recommend to help students get involved in local communities?
yeah, sure. As a business professor, I believe it's our duty to be engaged with the business community. That has transformed my teaching over the years. And so with my students, I've been able to bring the business community into the classroom, and I've also been able to take the students out into the business community. That level of engagement is game changing. I can teach a lot of things, but taking folks to a new business that just launched, helping them meet a founder and understand that process adds a ton of value for the students. And so that's been, I think, my superpower that's helped me transform my teaching, really helping my students connect to the local business community, find founders that they can identify with specifically and learn from those individuals.
Awesome. Thank you. Dylan, I'll change the question a little bit for you. As a newer entrepreneur, how do you go about trying to integrate and get out into your community?
Yep. So I've gone through a bunch of different institutions. So Rotary Club International, it's an organization it's service first, and it's really a group of business leaders, community leaders, and folks who just have a passion to do good in their local community, and then also on a global scale. And so that's been a good organization for me to just meet not only business leaders and community leaders, but also the people that we're serving. So I know Rotary has in some schools Rotaract Club, in different ways for students to get engaged and involved with that organization. Also, local Chamber of Commerce chapters. So most cities and most metropolitan areas will have them. That's a good way for students to just get involved and to meet business owners and people in the community. Sometimes they have programs, different networking events, and ways for people to get involved. And that's one. When I moved up to Lexington, I got involved with Commerce Lex, the chamber here in the city. And so that's always just a good way to meet people who are in earlier stages of the business and also in the later stage. And then this general industry associations is another way that I've gotten involved. So I joined we do a lot of website design and marketing for businesses and home services. So I joined an association, the Builders Industry Association. And so again, just businesses that are doing contract work in and around the home. And so that's just been a good way for me to network and to do sales, but also to just find local business owners in that area or in the area. So from a faculty perspective, either reaching out and getting in touch with the executive directors of those organizations is a good way to possibly build a pipeline or some mixed programming to get students more involved in those organizations. A lot of them they do have a paywall. So trying to work out a deal or work out a pipeline with those organizations for students would be probably a good start.
I love that. Chambers of Commerce were my go-to as an entrepreneur growing my business. Dan, you had something to add?
Yeah, it's an unsexy suggestion, but city hall meetings, council, like school board meetings, like these are public spaces where people who live in the communities that you're trying to innovate for are they have the passion and they're voicing their issues, right? And it's a kind of it's a neat. If you've never attended one of these, I suggest anyone at any level should, because you get to hear what your community around you is struggling with and cares about. And you will network and meet those people that are motivated to make change in those communities. So
awesome. Great suggestion. Another probably unsexy suggestion. When I was growing my business as an entrepreneur in Atlanta, I would actually contact the public library and then put on workshops in my areas of expertise for the general public. It's unsexy because it's free and it costs you time and effort and energy, but that was my way of giving back. And then sometimes I would actually gather new clients through that exchange as well. Dylan, you had something to add?
No, I was actually just agreeing with you with the public library. But since I'm on, one other shameless plug, Greek Life. So I know we've got an Alpha here, we've got an AK here. So we've got some folks, especially if you're in the D9, those organizations extend beyond school. And so if you're not financially active or you're not active with your chapter, that's a good way, an easy way to get involved, not only to network, but also to just get involved in the community, because a lot of them are very service oriented.
Yep, I love that. And to the point of the Rotary Club, I was a part of Toastmasters International, a similar organization for public speaking and leadership, and that allowed me to exponentially grow my network and get involved with the community. So, from a professor perspective, I try to integrate community partners and community small businesses into my classes as examples and as project focused. And to Isaac's point, paying them by giving them the insights. So if I'm teaching marketing classes, I'm having them give some suggestions based on their analysis of what the small business is doing. And for a business that's not a marketing company, they kind of need that. They might not have a marketing person on staff. So just trying to find out how we can, as faculty and as students, provide value to them in the exchange of getting their expertise. All right, next question. Mentorship. It's a crucial aspect of development in general, but I think it is really helpful for young entrepreneurs to have some sort of mentor. How do you recommend that faculty can facilitate community partnerships for mentorship matching and opportunities? Let's go to Dan. I know the Wondery does some of this.
We sure do, and I'm so glad you asked. Yeah, I'm willing to bet that whether this group of mentors lives in an innovation center like the Wondery or with the Career Center on your respective campus, there is a list of people made up of alumni, people that care about fostering student learning, that want to give back. And they are on a list, whether it is an active list or maybe a dead list, but they're there. And I know at the Wondery, we have a list of probably over 200 now people from around the world that have been through a rigorous background check, and they are forced to engage with our students. Otherwise, they're off the list. And so, I mean, you'd be silly not to reach out to us at the Wondery or your respective innovation center and say, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's who I hope to meet in these respective industries, and see what happens. I mean, it could be a mentor for your business idea or just like a mentor for your personal life. I think the neat thing about being in college is it's non-threatening. When you say I'm still a college student, everyone remembers that day or that time of their life, and they kind of like, oh yeah, I'd love to help you. But the second you get to the real world, it's like, all right, you're kind of a little more on your own, and people are less willing to help you. So take advantage of, tell your students to take advantage of their time while they're still a student. And I think they'll find that opportunities really land in their lap, and open doors will open a lot easier. But yeah, definitely utilize the mentor network and list that we've got at the Wondery.
I love that. Let's go to Jewel next.
Sure. All right. So contextually, entrepreneurship and startup culture looks completely different in Ghana. So I know a lot of people have talked about, the Chamber of Commerce, things that, a lot of things are like accessible. And we have that, but again, it's still somewhat like novel to our startup space. So ultimately, a lot of us, or a lot of our work here is very personable in the sense of personalized. So for us, when it comes to mentorship, we draw in, particularly from our university, from our alumni network. We have a really strong network of entrepreneurs who've graduated from this university and are contributing consistently to the ecosystem here. And then because of the brand and the way the university is positioned on the continent, being like a top 5 university in Ghana, et cetera, you have a lot of people that actually just want to pour in to our students. So we get a number of hits saying, I want to support our students. I want to share my expertise, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of like an easy pull to get people to want to come and talk and share and communicate and engage with our students. So, that kind of serves as an easy pipeline, but we do structure it a lot. We just started our entrepreneurship center about 2 years ago. And so with that, myself, our leads at the center are working together across like the curriculum to find a way to make sure that as people say they want to support, we can actually structure ways in which they can help our students based on their level, where they are in their business, et cetera. So that, again, that we see growth as well, because we want to measure what those interactions are happening. What are the outputs coming from these experiences, right? So beyond it, is it personal mentorship? Is it professional? Is it, what's happening towards the end of it? And we want to make sure that we replicate that over and over again. Secondly, another pool that we tap into is the faculty themselves, right? So I may have expertise, when it comes to social entrepreneurship, et cetera, but I may have a colleague like my colleague, Dr. Adomja, who specializes like in innovation, et cetera, et cetera. And so we connect them to faculty. So some students may come to me and say, oh, I need you to mentor me. I have emails right now that I got to respond to, but I will pass them off because our community is quite small for faculty. And I'll say, no, you should talk to XYZ, right? And facilitate the meeting and make sure that it is structured. And then lastly, the thing that I would say is that when we launched our incubator, it was important to create a really well-defined mentorship program, which, to your point, Jen, you were speaking to, what do people get back as they give back to our students or they engage with our students. So for us, we also figure out the gaps that certain people who are offering their services or their supports are, and saying, how can we, from an academic perspective, improve your outputs too? So we might be support them with saying, hey, we'll write a case study for you, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. We will exchange these services. They love our students, and we might offer up some students to do an internship, right? Just to make sure at the same time they see value in continuing to give, and it doesn't feel like we're constantly tapping them to do it over and over again. So there's structure in our mentorship pipeline, and we use a number of resources to fill in the gaps for what doesn't come as structurally. So yeah.
I love that. I think mentorship structure is something that's really hard for a lot of institutions and a lot of organizations to do. So thank you so much for that insight and giving us a preview as to how you guys do it. Let's go to Isaac next.
Yeah, sure. I love this topic of mentorship. It's one of the things that I think I enjoy most about being a business professor. So my students know that I'm a connector, and they're going to come to me and they're going to ask me to connect them with folks. I'll give you a real example. Just this past week, I had a student come and say, I have a business I want to launch in India. I'd love to get your perspective. And I said, sure. But guess what? I know somebody who launched that same type of business in another country. I'm going to make an introduction. And that student was so excited to be able to get to connect with that person. I have another student. She came, she's building an app. She wanted some perspective. I did even better. I connected to somebody in the industry, and they ended up writing her first angel investor check for her startup. So, my goal is be a vessel and pour into my students, connect them with the resources, understanding that these are going to be mentorship relationships that develop over time.
I like that. And that's a perfect segue to my question to Dylan, because people told me a lot in undergrad, like, get a mentor. And I never really knew, like, okay, I found somebody to be a mentor, but then it's like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't know how to go about this. And I think that's where the structure of a program really helps. So Dylan, as a young entrepreneur and from a student perspective, what help could faculty provide to you outside of a match for a mentor? How could they help you navigate that mentorship relationship to really get the most out of that exchange?
Yeah, really, it'd be helpful to have really give students an idea of what they want. So mentorship relationships are really, you get what you put into it. And so in knowing how to approach a mentor, and what questions to bring, or like you said, there's professional mentors, there's personal mentors. So really piecing together what it is you want to accomplish, and thinking about what types of mentors you need. If a faculty member kind of explained that to me, I think it would have been a little bit faster getting mentors. I got plenty of mentors, but I had to kind of learn it on my own as far as, oh, this is what I need. I need a mentor who has been doing the same type of business, who's miles ahead of me, who can give me advice. Because when I graduated, I knew I wanted to start a business, and my request was, oh, I need somebody to help me navigate what I don't know, someone to help me avoid the potholes. But I could have been really specific as far as to what that person might do, what position in a company they might hold. And so just helping students understand, like, mentorship is broad, and it is what you make of it. So that would be pretty helpful.
I like that, and I agreed. I think that would help. Go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, could we answer the question in the chat? I'd like to respond to that. A little bit easier than typing.
Yes.
Yeah, just so at the Wondery, we have a dedicated ecosystem director, builder, person in spot. And from afar, I've witnessed her really on the intake of this mentor or mentee program that you want to start, Lynn. She is really, I mean, these meetings that she has with these people last about an hour long to really get to know exactly what it is they're looking to be a mentor for, and when and how. And so that you aren't left wondering how to utilize them when that time comes, right? She's got that data on this person. Maybe they're, a really big hitter, they're crazy busy, but they verbally and writtenly have said, hey, bring me into the picture when this happens at your innovation center, or more people might be our general as like I'd love to just be present, right? Put me in a program, team me up with students. You know, I think this problem you're saying you have is like, get that information on the front end so that you're more confident reaching out and making those asks. And even like when we have mentors participate in our 10-week-long programs, the students are even kind of like what are we supposed to ask the mentors? Like, well, ask them anything. They're there. Like they want to give their input. You know, don't be afraid of them. They wouldn't be there if they didn't want to help in some way. So that goes both ways to the person running the mentorship program or whoever. But yeah, that is what I've seen our ecosystem builder do very well, is get to know these people on a good level. So you know how to ask them for help later.
I like
agree.
that. Go ahead,
Jen,
Jules.
can I add one thing?
Yep.
Just real, I'll try to be fast. I can
Yep,
be
no
long-winded like I hear in my lectures. But I was gonna type, but so Lynn, I was thinking through that. So what's helped me is really understanding what's the end goal, right? When it comes to your programs. And so, for example, with one mentorship program I had to structure, I told the mentors the goal in which you're meeting with them is to get them to MVP, right? Whatever those subsequent meetings mean, this is what should be happening. And so I would structure kind of like, here's your meeting. And this is specifically just for our business structure, because let me preface that with saying, like, sometimes you put students in a mentorship program or say, here, have at it. Here's your mentor. They don't call them, or they miss calls, or you just find that it's not as productive as it should be. And so this is why I had to take the approach of working from with the end in mind. What do I want to see happen by the time this student has engaged with this said person? Because they have a wealth of expertise, which also may mean they have a limited amount of time. So we need to make the best use of their time. So ultimately, what are you putting together in regards to that end goal, and saying, here are our students who are working towards MVP. Here are our students who are in simple ideation and they need your help just bouncing ideas off of one another. And this will require this time commitment. This will require this amount of experience, etc. And here's how your relationship should go. And then usually we have them like work on a mini contract together to talk through key areas of what they want to achieve in their time, how committed they're going to be to connecting with one another. And I used to have a mentorship manager who would also do a check-in with our mentors towards the end of the week to say, how did it go for this week, right? What came out of this? Just to, again, hold more accountability, because they get busy, they get excited, but if no one's holding you accountable to this, you have to think about that. So structuring it just depends on what your end goal is. So you can have a program where mentors jump in and it's a situation where you give them the outline of what they're expected to do and you connect them and match them. Or you can have one that's really a bit more structured because you're seeking a direct output by the end of the program experience. So it is based off what is the objective. And if it's personal and it's just like personal coaching, career coaching type of mentorship, then again, that can be a little bit more open and a bit more flexible, but it just depends on what you're trying to do. So I just want to share that.
Thank you so much. I definitely agree. And I think especially for like partnerships that are not necessarily formalized mentorship, but just like community partnerships, bringing community members and small businesses or large businesses into the classroom, bringing students into those businesses, I think it is really important to level set expectations. For one of the projects that I have my digital marketing students do, it's like saying,
Uh-oh. Coming back. Hang with us. Oh.
It's trying to come back.
Yeah, we could.
You gotta love technology. Can you hear me now? Okay, well, my video doesn't seem to be working, but we will keep rolling. Just level setting the expectation to say like, hey, I want you to be available for students for interviews. This should take up to 3 hours of your time, and then prepping the students to say, do your research before this occurs. And if you need to, or you think you might need insight from them, split that 3 hours up into 1 hour sections or an hour and a half, but just level setting that expectation. We have a few comments that I want to get to in the chat, but really quick, what resources do you think students need access to the most outside of funding? How can faculty connect students with some resources outside of funding? What do you think? Let's start with Isaac.
Yeah, what I would say, I got appointed by the Nashville mayor to support the business community last year. And that has helped me understand how city government, state government, and federal government are great resources for entrepreneurs. And so I would encourage faculty to think about what civic connections can you make in the market that you're based in. Connect with the mayor's office, connect with the economic development team at the city and at the state level, understand what programs, resources, even capital may be out there from a government perspective. Secondly, there's a lot of accelerators. Techstars, Plug and Play are national ones, but markets have local ones. These accelerators and incubators are great for students, and sometimes they can qualify. I've had some students qualify for local accelerators, go in, potentially get some funding, but get connected to other investors. And so stepping outside of the university, I think, is always a win. And for any student, use that academic email address, because people love talking to students and they love helping students. And I think that's just a great way to help scale and grow as a business owner.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's go to Dylan next. Resources you think students need. What did you need when you were a student?
Yeah, I would say the network. The network is so important, and it's who knows you and who you know. And so not only getting them involved with businesses and business owners, but also letting them know, like, hey, your goal is to go out and meet people. And when you talk to somebody, let them know what your objective is and what you're trying to do, and maybe they can connect you to somebody else. I found that it never hurts to know more people. And second is, it's really exposure. Um, if you can expose your students to more entrepreneurs and more businesses, the better. Because I know going into entrepreneurship, when I graduated, I only knew a few things. So I went to Oglethorpe University, which was in Atlanta, and Atlanta has become really a tech startup hub of the South. And so tech was really all I knew, and that was all we were exposed to. But there's so many different types of businesses and so many different types of flavors of entrepreneurship that, I mean, there's lifestyle businesses, there's corporations, the goal, there's venture backable businesses. So getting them exposed to as many types of businesses and as many types of entrepreneurs is going to be super important because it's going to help them kind of plan accordingly and let them see themselves as an entrepreneur and figure out which type of entrepreneurship is good for them. So that'll be super important as for setting their trajectory, because to start a business that's going to be a lifestyle business and just pay the bills and get your kids through college is something completely different, requires a different setup than starting a venture backable business with the goal of IPOing, so just having more entrepreneurs come in the door to talk to your students is going to be super important for them.
Love it. All right, let's go to Jewel next.
All right, great to have you back too, Jen. So yes, I believe as faculty and what we can provide in the classroom, number one, perspective. So I think to Dylan's point, I loved it in regards to just a number of different perspectives of entrepreneurship. So we do that through the form of master classes. So people who have failed, people who are succeeding, people who are in unusual markets, people who are not from the continent, who are exposed, just so many ways in which we give them perspective of what business could look like. And I saw someone mention in the chat that it's also not just entrepreneurship, but intrapreneurship, right? And other ways you can think about creatively solving problems, whether you're working with someone, for someone, you're under contract, whatever it is, how do we spark that entrepreneurial mindset? Second is ambiguity. So I know a lot of times when it comes to pedagogy in class, we are called to structure, follow a model. But I think sometimes a little bit of ambiguity, guesswork that students have to do, that they don't always have the answers, it forces them to get uncomfortable. And so we try to throw in a lot of ways in which they don't have the answers and they're looking to me for the answer, but I'm not the answer. I'm just a facilitator, right? Rather than being your actual faculty member in the context of entrepreneurship. And they hate it. Now, we have this first year course like I told you all about. They hate it, honey. But by the end, they love it, right? And by the end of the semester, end of the school year, they're like, oh my gosh, finally I understood what was happening with FDE. And then lastly is more so of this experiential experience. I think that's really important to our entrepreneurship classes, right? So learn by doing, that students have to tinker, they have to work. And even if we put them, like for instance, in the second semester of this first year program that they hate, they have to run this business model. So even if their venture fails, right, they get that experience of something not working. And even if they make the money, they get that experience. All of that is something that teaches our students because it's a mandatory first year course. So whether you're a computer science major, engineering major, you have to take this course. It forces them to say, oh, I thought my train of thought was just to go and be an engineer, but now I see opportunity in a different way thanks to this course, and that came from that experiential experience.
I love that. When I was helping to design the SimTernship that goes with the entrepreneurship courseware, students actually get to run a business. So it's like you have this money that you have to manage, and you have to do things like figure out who your manufacturing are going to be, manage your budget, and really get that experience. No, it's not with the business that they want to do, but just having that exposure to that and being able to walk that process is so important for students. Last but not least, Dan, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, everything, I completely agree with everything that's been said. And what I'm starting to notice is, I know you wanted to say outside of funding, but I do think it's an important thing just to mention is like, we at the Wondery, we've been experimenting our entrepreneurship programs, just took a cohort of about 30 people to South by Southwest, all expenses paid, so that this group of budding entrepreneurs could do their customer discovery at this conference. So what was asked of them is to do at least 100 customer discovery interviews in a week's time to people who are attending South by Southwest. And the accelerated learning of an experience of being a part of a program like that happened in that condensed amount of time, man, it's been so cool to hear the stories come back about all the pivots that happened of when these students going through this program were talking to people on the street, and it changed their whole thought and trajectory of their idea. And I think if that isn't happening to you as an entrepreneur early on, you're going to get so far down the road and you're going to be like, how did I get this wrong, right? And so I think finding opportunities that, you know, maybe could be funded for you, but takes you out of your place and brings you somewhere else, but kind of holds you accountable to do these action items, that is a phenomenal experience to put yourself in, that maybe or not be funded for you, but well worth it if you can get it in. And I think we're going to try and do more of those at the Wondery. And I know at least there's another organization on campus, our immersion office has also somehow got this amazing grant where there's money set aside for every single student to pitch what they want to use for it. And, you know, they could attend a conference that's in a whole nother state or country and use that money to get them those experiences. So funding is important. It gets you access to places that you aren't currently.
That's true. And if you guys need a faculty advisor person to go on that trip next time, you let me know. I will volunteer as tribute. Thank you all so much. This is great. We have a handout for all of the attendees. It's actually an entrepreneurship checklist that you can send to your students so that they can kind of know what they don't know and some steps to take to go from idea to launching. And thank you so much to our panelists. Great information. Wonderful conversation, and I will hand it over back to Paul.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you to you. Thank you to each of our panelists and to everyone who took the time to be here today and to participate. We love all the comments and questions that were in the chat. We love seeing that engagement. And Jen, you're a true professional, continuing even without your camera. So we really appreciate your perseverance there.
Gotta love technology.
Yes, right? Every teacher, every professor has had that experience, right? Well, I also want to announce our gift card winner. But first, if you didn't have a chance at the beginning of the event, I'm going to put the link back up on your screen to either schedule a walkthrough or request free instructor access to Stuken's entrepreneurship courseware and SimTernship. And you can see right behind me, that is the cover of Jen's courseware for entrepreneurship. It's amazing. Please check it out. Get your free instructor access. With that access, you'll be able to preview the entire courseware, including lesson plans, assignments, lecture slides, this internship, and more. So go ahead and click on that link right now. So also congratulations to Sumita and Priyanka. They are the winners of our gift card giveaway. Our team will reach out and get you those cards. And if you're interested in speaking at a future webinar or participating in one of our panels, please take a moment to click the link that's on your screen and you can apply to speak with us. Thank you again to everyone who joined us today. We thank you for your participation in the chat and to our panelists once again. We appreciate your continued support. Have a wonderful day and a great weekend. And remember to stay current with Stukent. Goodbye, everyone.